born out of frustration and the irritation of the fact that I've heard all of these arguments before, and they fall within one of 5 categories. They might have a different spin on it, but it's like, do I have to go through this again and again? And yeah, I probably do come across perhaps as strident and aggressive, but it is born out of frustration and irritation, and perhaps an acceptance that I just can't get this point across to them, that they've got no bloody evidence. Sorry, Matt, back to you.
No, it's no problem. Yeah, it's worth pointing out that while most people are going to be, I think most people are going to be reached as a result of challenge and confrontation, that there are some who are never going to be reached by confrontation. They're going to have to be, handheld and guided as nicely as possible towards reason. And that's why I'm a fan of there being, let's be open to all approaches. The thing is, when you were talking about frustration, clips of the show end up on YouTube, and people get a certain impression about who I am because of clips. Because occasionally I'll do a rant that somebody enjoys, and that'll get up there, and I end up often looking much angrier than I actually am. And there are a number of times where I've mistakenly hung up on people. I mean, I did it intentionally, but it was a mistake to hang up on them on the show. And most of the time, though, I don't think it was a mistake when I've hung up on somebody on the show. People on the show, as I said before, I think tend to get about as good as they give. And a lot of what people write off as anger is really frustration. In some cases, like 2 weeks ago, my frustration wasn't even with the person on the phone. It was the fact that we were having technical difficulties with the phone, as we always do. It drives me absolutely crazy because you're trying to have a conversation and you want to interrupt in order to be, and that's the question of interrupting has come up so many times. Is it rude? Should you just let them go on and on? And I learned, I've been doing this show for 6 years or so. I learned very early on that I have to interrupt. I mean, we have limited time, and the way a lot of the theistic arguments go, they'll begin with something that is in, oh, cat. Wow, I'm still here. Cool. They'll begin with a point that is obviously false or absurd, something that is the rough equivalent of, I can survive in space without any assistance. And they will then begin to build an argument based on that premise. And 5 minutes later, if I don't interrupt them, I'll get to talk. And I'll say, let's go back to what you said at the beginning about you being able to survive in space without, any assistance or equipment. And they'll say, oh, I didn't say that. Or you're misrepresenting what I'm saying. Or, well, yeah, you might be technically correct on that point, but let me rephrase it this way. And then they go on to make another fucking argument for 5 minutes. So now we spent 10 minutes from entirely flawed premises. And I found out really early on that it was better for everybody if I just stopped at the first point of disagreement and it got clarification or a definition, or let's figure out this point on which we disagree so that we don't waste everybody's time. And in the calls where I've had somebody who's open to that, they've been some of the best calls, and they'll go on for 30, 40 minutes, and nobody complains that this person was on the show too long. And yet I've had calls that lasted 5 minutes where it was like, why didn't you hang up on them after 30 seconds? So it's one of those things.
What do you think of the best calls? Because I think that most people who watch the show, and I regularly watch it, most people are desperate for the batshit crazy religious people to get their arse handed to them by you. I mean, do you get a sense of enjoyment and fun out of doing that, or do you feel a bit bad in bitch slapping them?
I'd be lying if I didn't say I enjoyed it a little bit. I enjoy doing the show just in general, but that's not my favorite part of the show. I realize that there's a lot of people who watch the show, and they're in the chat room. And by the way, our chat room, along with the show, is a cesspool. And I've said it over and over again. They know that I absolutely despise 90% of what they do in the chat room, and for some reason, they're still fans of the show. So, it's not my doing. But there's a segment of the population that really just wants to see theists, especially the most crazy ones, really put in their place. And I think that's born of frustration, too. I think that's born of, I'm stuck living in a world where you guys, despite believing the most crazy things possible, represent not only a majority, but a powerful majority that has the potential to control my everyday life. And I want to see you get what I think you deserve. There's a number of people who hold that view. There are others who are more interested in the actual conversation. I enjoy most aspects of the show. I enjoy any call where either I learn something or I've had the opportunity to ensure that somebody else learned something. I liked when Ray Comfort called. I liked the 45-minute debate with Matt Slick on Transcendental Argument, although almost everybody else on the planet hated that show. I get off on watching people think and making people think and thinking myself. And it's not, I don't really enjoy smacking people around. There are some people, can we keep the cat from running across my laptop? There are some people who I do enjoy smacking around because I'm absolutely convinced they deserve it. One person I'd love to smack around is William Lane Craig. Unfortunately, William Lane Craig has said of our show that we have absolutely no credentials, and he won't debate people without a PhD, or I think pretty soon it's going to be 2 PhDs.
So don't get me started on William Lane Craig. Matt, I'm going to interrupt you very, very briefly because I have to go to the bathroom. What I'd like to do is for you to give a shout out to Iron Chariots and what that page does, and when I come back, we'll start taking calls. Do excuse me, I apologise for this, but I do have to go. I'll be right back.
Have a good time. Yeah, so several years ago, Russell and I got together and put together ironchariots.org, which is essentially a wiki site. It's listed as the Counter-Apologetics wiki. Initially, it was supposed to be a description of every theistic argument and the various responses, to be a sort of teaching tool for people. I'm not as active on the site as I used to be. I wrote up a number of things years ago, some minute-by-minute responses to episodes of Ray Comfort's Way of the Master series, and a verse-by-verse deconstruction of the Sermon on the Mount, a few articles on logic and things like that. And other people came in and have taken over. It's grown. We've been fortunate because there's a lot of people who are coming in to create spam posts. But we've been fortunate that it's kept kind of a low profile so that we didn't get flooded with apologists all the time coming in editing it. But I got there were a number of hits recently because of a couple articles that were up there. The word I got was that Russell had received an email from Stephen Fry saying, "Hey, I found this thing on Iron Chariots and I was going to link it on Twitter, but I've got, umpty million followers. I want to make sure I wasn't going to break your server." And Russell had asked me, "Do you think that would break the server?" And I said, "I don't know, but tell him to link it anyway, because Stephen Fry breaking my server would be something that I would thoroughly enjoy."
Now, one thing that I would like to explain for not necessarily DPR, who understands our perspectives and speaks to us a great deal, but for others who may be in Australia or England or some more secular Scandinavian country, it's very oppressive when the entirety of your government holds ludicrous beliefs, not just religion, but excessive, extreme, and oppressive, restrictive religion, and that the judgments that they make, that judges, that police, that teachers make against you for not sharing whatever religious belief they have, is a very oppressive society. I mean, I know of one case where a child in one classroom did not want to give a pledge to the flag, which we can argue about. We shouldn't be giving a pledge to a flag anyway, but here she's abstaining, and she has a right to abstain. One of the teachers reprimanded this child, giving her the nonsense about this being a Christian country and that she had better pledge the flag. Mind you, she has a right not to. But she's being reprimanded because it's un-Christian not to pledge the flag. Her actual explanation why she didn't do this was because she was a Jehovah's Witness and it was a religious conviction that she not pledged to anything but God. The teacher who came to the child's defense against the other teacher was an atheist, and the atheist who's defending the Christian's rights against the other Christian of another denomination, the atheist has to keep quiet because both of them would turn on her if anyone knew. And that being in such an oppressive environment like this, when you have the few venues like the Magic Sandwich and the Atheist Experience where you get to hear these arguments that we're so fluent in, people out in the public have usually never heard these. And it's greatly refreshing to be able to have these opinions put out there, and especially in such a blunt force way.
Sorry, I brought the first caller in. If you've finished, we'll take the call. But if I bring people in, can you just make sure you mute your microphone when you're not talking? And I'm likely to bring you in before we're ready for you. So if you just remain quiet until we invite you to speak. But we have Taco with us. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks.
You're a little bit quiet. Can you speak up a bit?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I in my high school I had let's start. In Holland there's not many religious people as in America, but in my high school we had a biology class, and I had an autistic kid in my class, and he was raised really religious, and we learned about dinosaurs and stuff, and he came up with some story about Jesus putting down dinosaur bones or something. Kind of weird. But the teacher actually told him that it was not true and stuff, and he started freaking out and all that, and crying and all that. And the teacher got in a real problem for that. Do you think that's fair?
Who would like to take that?
I do. I mean, we are taught all the time that we are supposed to respect religious beliefs. And when you're talking about something that might be true, I will respect that. Okay, I do not attack Christianity as a whole on the concept of, on the loftier concept of whether there is a Jesus character, whether the higher theology has any evidence or any truth to it at all. I don't attack that. I attack the specific claims that we can prove are wrong. If we can prove that it is wrong, I should not be required to respect it. And so when you tell somebody the fact of the matter, I don't understand why we need and society requires that we dance around somebody's desire to believe that the Holocaust didn't happen, that reptiles are in charge of the government, or that we never went to the moon. There's no purpose in coddling such beliefs. They should be bludgeoned out of existence.
I mean, that's one of the things that I think is difficult, and I think it sort of like raises the levels of frustration and irritation. Where do you start with someone who's holding such ridiculous views? Matt, where would you go with that?
Well, let me kind of backtrack for just a second. I think there's a difference between saying something's not true and saying it's false or that it's a lie. But that's a really fine philosophical point that'll take us down towards places we don't want to go. But I have no problem at all telling somebody that what they're saying is not true, or that I'm not aware of any reason to think that it is true, and could they provide, some evidence? There are things, though, that are just patently absurd, and that's, I think, what Arn was addressing. If your view is that Jesus ran around in ghost form burying dinosaur bones, well, yes, I can't disprove that, because first of all, to paraphrase the young Earth creationists, I wasn't there. But also, this isn't any sort of testable claim. But I don't think we need to... I mean, I've tried to be as intellectually honest as possible. I try not to make grand assertions about what is or isn't possible. But I really don't think we need to waste a lot of time pretending that it's even remotely likely that a magic man has run around and buried dinosaur bones. I think we can apply Occam's razor and just say, you know what, we've got good reason to believe that these things were put there by a process that we understand well. And if their response to that is that, well, yeah, you work through that process. It may not happen with the dinosaur bones, but it happens all the time with other claims, with respect to evolution. Now they're just dancing around. They're changing their claim to fit whatever they need it to fit.
And one of the other...
But my point was more that, I mean, it's like, those that claim the Earth is only 6,000 years old, is there any point in actually having any discourse with people who are just so way off the mark? And if you are going to have a discourse, how do you approach it?
Yeah, I try not to write off anybody as hopeless until they just demonstrate that that there's no other conclusion to reach. So we've had, I've had conversations with young earthers. All you can do in that case is point them to the evidence. And if the evidence isn't working, then I think the next step is to go back and figure out why the evidence isn't working. What preconception do they have? What requirement for, what epistemological requirements do they have that are preventing them from seeing this? And there may be some people that are just, I'm sure there are some people who are forever beyond the reach of reason. But I don't think that most people are that way. I think that if you dig, it just takes so much work. But I think if you dig, you'll find where exactly the logical fallacy is, where the presupposition is that prevents them from being able to accept this. Whether or not you'll ever be able to change their mind is another story. And it comes down to how much patience you have. I go to the limits of my patience, and then I'm done. And they're done, and they'll get hung up on. I'm not going to waste the show on people who have demonstrated that they have no actual interest in truth.
Yeah, another problem that we have is that we can affect one person at a time. But we can do any kind of educational documentary that you want, but everybody's religious beliefs are so diverse, and what they take as evidence or what might compel one person will completely go over the head of the next person. So you really only reach one person at a time. Whereas here in Dallas, 50,000 people will march into one church and just blindly swallow whatever Ray Comfort says from the podium. And those kind of odds are very frustrating and oppressive too.
They are indeed. Can I just remind people, if you would like to appear on the show, send a Skype contact request to Magic Sandwich Show, all one word, all lowercase. And we are joined with by the next caller, and big dyslexic. Sorry, what's it? Storm
CMH, sir.
There we go. Welcome to the show. How can we help you?
First of all, I want to say you're doing a really good job, and this is an excellent charity you're doing it for.
Thank you.
Big fan of all three of you. I wanted to ask, mainly Matt, but DPR, Aaron, you two can chime in if you want. Who, aside from your most recent annoyance on the Ask of the Atheist show that's been calling in under like 20,000 different names, who was the most annoying person you had to deal with, either frequent caller or individual, or one of each if you wish? And who was the most interesting, funny, intelligent, thought-provoking, whatever you want to call it, best of the callers you've had? Or just general people you talk to about religion or skepticism in general. Forgive me, I'm a little nervous.
Oh, yeah. Don't be nervous. Yeah, thanks. Wow. There's a problem here in that the guy that you're talking about, who's been calling over and over and over again, he's Marcus at Stone Church. He was Thomas in the UK. He's, I don't know, George, Glenn, Ben, everything else.
Sorry, Matt, can I just pause you? Could I just pause you a
Sure.
second? Storm, could you just mute your microphone when you're not speaking? Thank you.
I'll hang up then.
No, you can stay. Please stay. Just mute your microphone. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, there should be a mute. Okay. So anyway, that person who's been calling, they had one of the best calls we've ever seen. It's been popular. They had an interaction with Tracy, and I think Tracy does a great job all the time. But she did especially well in this case. The problem with it is that he's also had some absolutely horrible calls, and people will immediately recognize that it's him. I wasn't as good as right at recognizing his voice as other people were, so I finally, called him out this past week, and he has an agenda. He thinks that the show should be 75% confrontational theistic callers, and if we're not getting them, then by George, he's going to come in and do it in whatever fake voice he wants. And my general position is that there's somebody out there who believes almost anything. I mean, there's a reason why we have Poe's Law. And as long as it's not an obvious fake, I'm not going to call them out on it. Because what kind of asshole would I be if it turned out to be someone who genuinely believed this, and I just say, oh yeah, thanks for your prank call, you're an idiot, bye-bye. So as long as the call allows us to get the conversation going, because Aaron mentioned before that we can only reach one person at a time. In my case, I'm not trying to reach the person on the phone almost ever. I'm trying to reach everybody else who's watching the show, because it's much more likely that somebody else will benefit from this than the person I'm talking to. So that caller has been some of the best calls and some of the worst calls, and I don't want to give them any credit at all, but the most important thing is the message and getting the conversation out there. And that can happen even if somebody's faking and pretending to believe something that they don't believe, because somebody out there really does believe it. And
it's the fence sitters. The fence sitters are more likely going to be the ones who actually care about truth and what is true. It's not the ones that are so committed that they're going to put on their armor of God and go do combat. It's not that. You're not going to reach them because they have steeled their mind against reason anyway. It's the fiasco that they bring to the confrontation that everybody else is going to see. So like Matt, I always focus on the people that are watching in the periphery.
Yeah, there's a few clips of the show that have gotten kind of popular, and so they stick in my memory. The guy who asked, why we don't die when the sun goes down, and there was a guy named Three Eyes who kept calling in, who I ended up banning from the show. If he called in and gave his real name, or if anybody recognized his voice, we just didn't let him on anymore. It was not so much that it was frustrating, but it was just, it was a special kind of crazy. He basically gave instructions for how to get in touch with the spirit world, and it involved tying a rope around your waist and having somebody hang onto the rope. And then you took a mirror that you had to make by hand, the wooden frame for it with a certain number of screws in the right place. And then you would hold the mirror under flowing water like in a creek. And this would allow you to see into the spirit world. And the rope was there because the spirit world would try to suck you in. The guy was just, crazy beyond belief. And so that one was annoying. The problem with like people asking, what's your favorite call, or what call was really significant, which ones were most frustrating. Having done so many of the shows, apart from the ones that got popular on YouTube or where we've had a repeat call, there's not that many that I can really cite as memorable, because one of the question I get most often asked in email is, we've seen the poor theists, the one who couldn't argue their way out of a paper bag. But has there ever been a theist who really provided something that was thought-provoking, that, really made you think, or really gave you difficulty? And the answer is no. Unfortunately, in 6 years on the show, I don't think it's really happened. There are some people who have phrased their arguments in a way that made me think a little harder to find the fallacy, but nothing that was thought-provoking in a way of, have I missed something, or could this actually be, true?
Well, this in a way, Matt, goes back to the point I made earlier on, that in my experience of 3+ years on YouTube, all the arguments you hear fall within one of those sort of like 5 categories, and they're all nonsense. They've all been totally debunked. You've got the personal testimony, you've got the where we would get morals from if it wasn't for the Bible, you've got the predictions in the Bible, you've got there are a couple of them. But they're
the
all
pseudoscience claim.
Yeah. Oh, fine tuning. That's another one. But it's all the same. And I have to say, I'm utterly bored with having to deal with them, and that, as I say, probably reflects in the frustrating and apparently aggressive manner in which I deal with people. Caller, is there anything you'd like to add?
I think she's gone. She was terrified that she might have background noise.
She's gone now. As I say, if you
hopefully
want to,
we answered the question.
If we, Matt, that's what I was going to ask. The caller that you're referring to, the one that always calls in, he was the one on the last show that the call ended with him saying, "Oh, why are you not prepared to talk about so and so?" and then put the phone down. Yeah. Yeah, you won't talk about it. Bang, slap down goes the phone.
Yeah, recently, I mean, early on, he called pretending to be a Christian at a church in Austin. I have no idea where he lives or what his beliefs actually are. And the interesting thing is that because of those conversations, because of him making claims about that particular church, the Stone Church in Austin, I actually ended up having lunch with a pastor from the Stone Church at Austin to talk about, and Beth and I actually went down to the Stone Church for a service. We didn't, we weren't really recognized and there wasn't any fuss, but we went down to a service. So I now have a better relationship with one of the pastors at the church because of this guy. And by the way, the pastor of the church was actually a fan of the show. I mean, they're Calvinists, so it's all predetermined. And they just kind of smile and nod. Yep, there's those atheists futilely trying to convince people and make a change or a difference when that's not possible.
Well, if I'd actually answered the question, which I'm about to do now, I would have said probably the person I find most irritating, although I haven't had any direct contact with him, is probably Shock of God, because he's just so totally dishonest. As for religious people that I respect, often I've asked this question and my answer has always been the same. Richard Harry is now a member of the House of Lords, former Bishop of Oxford, but he's so Anglican and so sort of like dismissive of so many parts of the Bible that you wonder what he really actually is left there to believe in. Anyway, welcome to the show, Guy.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hi, Guy.
Happy to see you. So I offered actually to tell you a little story about my time I was in Africa. So I passed more than 13 years. 3 years as a teacher and 10 years as a logistic engineer. So I had a lot of encounters with Médecins Sans Frontières without working directly for them. This was mainly in Central Africa, so in Cameroon, Chad, Gabon, Central African Republic. And the story I want to share with you is about the work from Doctors Without Borders, what problems they really encountered and what doctors must be there for them to have the psychological support they really need, because the work they're doing is not always very satisfying. This history plays in Chad, on the frontier in the Lake Chad between Chad and Cameroon. There is a village, and it's a mostly Islamic region there. So every village, they have their own traditional doctors. And the biggest sickness what people have there is with the eyes. They have a certain thing that they eat. It's like corn, who gives really makes them blind. This is in this crowd that it attacks the eyes. And the doctors were really many of them were there. But there are these traditional practitioners, these traditional doctors. The remedy these doctors had was writing with chalk on a blackboard source from the Quran, wash it and give this water to drink to the patients. And they could not allow to let Doctors Without Borders working there. So they really made everything to avoid that Doctors Without Borders can come to these villages to do their work, because the science or the medicine confronted absolutely their belief and their religions. you can imagine that during these 10 years, I had many opportunities to encounter them and also to work together, not for them, but work together with them. And there are a lot of such things what I can witness. Really, your support for these guys, it's really important. Money is one thing, but also the moral support. And this is what they really need. And that's really that what we cannot give to them. So at least our money will be helpful for them.
Well, thank you very much for that account. I have to say that I am very disappointed in the amount of money that we've raised this year. But as I've said on previous shows, on previous occasions, to a degree, the publicity is something that I think is important, and I'll try and seek comfort from the fact that the programme at the very least has raised publicity, if it has not in fact raised as much money as I had hoped for. But thank you very much.
We are only $300 away from breaking 20,000, and I'd like to see us do that sometime very soon. As far as publicity for this charity event, I think that's the reason that we don't have the figures that we used to have. There were some problems in our advertising that we could have done better or could have had more involvement with. I want to thank you, Guy, for bringing up this account. And yes, this is what it's all about, and I'm done. Matt?
Well, I sort of dropped the ball. I mean, I got email from Richard, and it didn't get answered, and I have, the wig and the dress that we were going to put up on eBay. There's been so much going on with the wedding and everything that a lot of this slipped through the cracks. Hell, I did a nonprofits yesterday morning and forgot to announce that I was going to be on here, even when it was right in front of me.
Now, you wonder why I get angry with Aaron when he walks away from his computer, leaving his microphone on, so we get echo and background noise.
I forgot also, my mother used to run a gymnasium in Arizona. She has a basketball signed by the Phoenix Suns, and she wanted me to put this up for auction. This is a late entry. Anybody wants a basketball signed by the Phoenix Suns, including somebody famous in here? I don't know because I don't watch basketball, but there it is.
The other thing that I think is important to mention is this, that despite the technical issues that we had, which, as I said before, I think is down to the fact that Skype introduced new updates like within the last 24, 48 hours, and they caused us an enormous amount of problems. The majority of the show has been recorded. It will be posted onto YouTube, probably on the Magic Sandwich Show YouTube channel, and the donation pages will be staying open for at least another 3 months. I think they finish about mid-December. So if you're not watching this live and you're watching it on YouTube, you still have an opportunity to make a donation. Guy, thank you very much for your call, and hopefully there were a couple of people who have sent a request, but they don't seem to be online. As I say, if you would like to appear, please send a contact request, Magic Sandwich Show. Perhaps whilst we're waiting for the next callers, Matt can perhaps give a shout out for his 2 items that he's auctioning on eBay.
Yeah, and it's a good thing that some of this is going to be around for a few months. Not long ago, I did an episode of the show in drag. This is the lovely copper red wig that I wore. I'm not just wearing this because Aaron's hair makes me jealous. It actually doesn't make me jealous. I'm proud of my chrome dome. But we're putting the wig that I wore on that show, which, by the way, that was to raise money to send kids to Camp Quest and to keep Camp Quest going. We are also including the dress that I wore. This is, we got it at Urban Outfitters, and you can actually go, I forget the name of this. It's awesome. It's so cool that when we tried it on, Beth bought one for herself. It's over on the mannequin. It's this multi-purpose, reversible skirt thing. It's hard to even show, but you can wear it a number of different ways. You can wear it as a skirt. It's got two pieces that you can separate, so you have two different fabrics for a top part and a bottom part. You can make like a thong, or not a thong, a toga type thing out of it. It's really cool, and it was comfortable and stylish, and And because PZ asked last night, there was no intent to include this, but I have here a size 52 double D, if you can read that. This was the biggest bra that Walmart actually had. And I have a big chest, so I mean, we had to get almost. I could have gone a little smaller, but we decided we'd go ahead and do this. In case you're not quite aware how big a 52 double D is, I can actually fit this over my head with the headphones on, and so we will throw in the bra. I'll sign stuff if they want. We can try and include a DVD of that episode of the show. We'll get it all posted, and people can. That's very grateful, Matt. Tons of money.
What I thought was interesting during the course of that show, you actually expressed some sort of like the experience of preparing for it and how it had sort of like educated you to a degree. Do you want to just talk us through that a little bit?
Sure. I'd actually wanted to do this show for a long time, both kind of from my own experience, but there was a point that I wanted to make, and this was a perfect opportunity to make it. We talked before about William Lane Craig citing the fact that, well, we don't have any credentials and that he's not going to debate people without credentials. My entire point of doing the show is that it's the argument that matters. It's the evidence that matters, not who says it, and certainly not what their credentials are. So it doesn't matter if an argument comes from somebody in drag or somebody with a view that you don't agree with or somebody without credentials. The arguments stand and fall on its own merits. And it is not just, he's not just being pretentious in this, I won't deign to debate somebody who doesn't have a PhD. He's being irrational, and to use one of his favorite words, illogical, which is not one of my favorite words, and an ass. He just really is. He's being an ass. In the process, I don't want to pretend like I got some grand insight into what it's like to be one of the many people who are transgendered, transvestite, transsexual, etc. But I got a little taste of it, in much the same way that I got a little taste of the privilege that comes with wearing a black shirt with the white tab collar. I wore that for another show and ran around town wearing it, and people were allowing me to get ahead of them in line, and I got all sorts of privilege, and that was very interesting. In the process of preparing for the drag show, I ended up shaving my legs and shaving my arms, all my upper chest, everything that would have shown. I shaved off my beard, but I also went and got a manicure and pedicure along with full painting of my nails and everything. There's a picture of me in flip-flops. And I found myself sitting there and having to fight the urge to say, I'm just doing this for a show in drag, where I'm just doing a drag show. And at one point, I gave in. The kind of self-consciousness overcame me. And I did say, I'm doing a show for drag. We're raising money for charity, and that's why I'm doing this. As if I needed to give any reason to anybody for why I would want to get my toenails painted. That's how deeply ingrained this is, even in those of us who are completely supportive of people, regardless of their sexuality, regardless of their gender identity. And the fact that I'm a vocal, outspoken atheist. I'm a vocal, outspoken advocate of LGBT rights and issues. And I didn't think that I would feel the need to succumb to that sort of, let me make an excuse and take some of the burden off. But I did. And I felt bad about it afterwards.
The way you expressed it then, and also the way you expressed it on the show, it seemed that it was more a problem within yourself, as opposed you weren't being treated or discriminated against, but it was sort of like more a self-conscious thing. Would that be accurate? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So when I did it, it was a little different. He was in the protection of his show. When I did my Sigourney Weaver costume, that was another experiment. I spent 8 hours in hair and makeup in preparation for this to be completely deceiving as an attractive woman. I wasn't just a woman. I was an attractive woman. This was when I was in my 20s. I was much skinnier, much younger, but it still required illusions like a poofy shouldered dress and things of that sort. And I went to school to hide my natural shoulders, make it look like I had a smaller rib. So I do this thing, and I felt really bad for women, and particularly attractive women, who go through this regimen, this ritual nonsense to look like this all the time. It seemed totally unnecessary to me. I realized that if I were an attractive woman, I probably would not be very popular because I would be one of the tomboy types. And the only advantage I get on this experience over what Matt did was that I ended up having to get a ride back to my apartment complex, and they weren't going to take me to my apartment. They just dropped me off out front, and I had to walk in Texas. And I had to make a decision. Do I act convincing so that no one notices that I'm in a dress?
I've with those two accounts, I've actually discovered something about myself. And I don't know what it says about me or what it says about either Matt or Aaron. For some reason, I find the thought of Aaron in a dress much more uncomfortable than I do with Matt. And I say, I don't know what that says about me or either of you. Perhaps we should swiftly move on to Prognemesis, the next caller.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. How can we help you, sir?
Well, my first question I wanted to ask was already answered by the first caller. So I came up with the second one. And it's sort of in regards with the situation Potholer 54 is, and Wildwood Claire, I think her name is, with the DMCA. It's more for Matt. Have you ever gotten into legal problems with the Atheist Experience show?
No. There were some concerns early on, particularly with nonprofits, with regard to using intro music. And some of the older episodes of the nonprofits, we would play an entire, even before I was involved, they would play an entire song almost as an introduction, which I thought was way too long anyway. So one of the first things I did was kind of pare that down to 45 seconds or so that we fall within fair use. And then Brian Stigma was kind enough to write a theme song for the TV show that I love. I realize not everybody loves it, but hey, I'm running the show, so we'll play what I like. But it's a song that belongs to us. So we haven't run any legal problems there. There are some limitations on public access TV in that you're not allowed to advertise. We can't mention prices. And there are a few times where somebody has mentioned a price, but there's somebody calling in. There's a couple times where I've said something that might have possibly been able to get us into a little bit of trouble. Fortunately, we have not had any legal problems as a result of the show.
I think we've escaped it so far, but I think that's probably because most people that we upset realise that we are men of straw and it isn't worth trying to sue us. But there we are. Prognemesis, thanks very much for the call.
I'd like to add something to that since you brought her up. But the Amanakan girl that did the DMCA, I had considered in her plight, knowing that she is a product of her environment and that she was just trained to believe what she does and has obviously never given it any serious thought. She's being misled by Harun Yahya, and who couldn't destroy his argument. I thought it would be worth some viewers to have her on the show for the charity and just explain things to her. But then I watched her channel and realized that this girl is so harmless, and that this is not her motivation. She'll probably never venture into the foray of theology again. If she does, she knows what's out there. But hair and makeup and nails are all this girl's about, and she doesn't know anything else. And there's no point in pursuing the conversation with her. I just let her be.
I think, in a way, I shared to a degree that sympathy. I think she did something that she probably will regret, and she didn't appreciate what she was doing. But at the same time, I mean, it's very difficult not to fill in a DMCA takedown notice, which undoubtedly she will have done through YouTube, and not see all the warnings they give, all the advice they give about copyright. Yeah, perhaps a little bit naive, but not. I'm sorry, I'm struggling, especially against Potholer. But anyway.
I strongly suspect that she did this under advisement, or that someone else filled it out for her.
But one of the things, of course, is that the ACA doesn't actually. We get lumped in with the YouTube atheists, which isn't really fair to the YouTube atheists who are actually doing real work and working on YouTube. We're just a public access TV show that people have uploaded clips to YouTube. And the other thing is that, there's no slick production. I'm not using clips from anybody. It's just me and the co-hosts up there talking and giving our opinion, which is automatically protected. And since we're all doing it for free, it would be pretty pointless for anybody to sue us, because none of us have made a penny off of this. Although I will say that I received a couple things, gifts in the mail, some books and things like that. So I won't say that I haven't benefited from it at all. But the big benefit from it is the email that I get from people whose views have changed because.
And I think that must be a warming feeling. I occasionally get them. I suspect you get them much more than I do.
One of the co-hosts or a caller.
Whoa! Sorry, background noise. I think this is. Oh, is he gone? Oh, I thought he wanted to join the show. Well, I'm not sure we've got any callers. If you want to join a conversation with Aaron Ra or Matt Dillahunty, send a contact request to Magic Sandwich Show. Matt, I know that you said you'd agree for an hour to appear for an hour. I know the hour's up, but could we perhaps seek to trespass on your generosity and keep you here for a little bit longer?
Well, last year you had me booked for an hour, and I think I did 2.
You actually did almost 2.5.
Yeah, so I'll stay till you kick me off, pretty much.
Okay, that's great.
Which you've already done once, and after you dropped me earlier, you guys had all kinds of technical problems, and the first thing I did was I sent a message to you saying, I bet you wish you hadn't hung up on me now.
Well, I thought that was going to be some sort of revenge that you were going to have on me when you returned, but for those of you that weren't here earlier on, Matt joined us very briefly, and I was going to do it at the end of this bit, but I just couldn't resist it. I'm troublesome, I'm bad through and through, but I had to do a Dillahunty on him, and I just said, Matt, you're done, and kicked him off, and I thought, I can't believe I did that. But there we are.
It was hilarious. And actually, Kirky 420 was on right afterwards to do the sing-along, and I think Aaron was wanting him to do the Punch You in the Face for Jesus song, which is based on somebody who called in to our show, at least as far as I'm aware, the guy who threatened to come down and punch me in my fat face for Jesus. And I was so wanting to hang out and do a karaoke with him on that, but I needed to get some sleep for today.
Now, you ever wonder about people like that guy who had no argument, and this is his action, his reaction, his violence. Do you ever wonder what is he thinking now? I mean, look at the reaction that we got out of this, and I wonder if he ever rethinks his position that, gee, I had nothing, and I had to offer to punch this guy I'm talking to over the phone, and then make a big joke out of it, and they write a song about it, and everybody has a great laugh. I have to wonder about people like that.
Yeah, in his case, I'd like to think that he was another, Poe caller. I don't know for sure. It was really strange because we had what I would normally consider to be a really good and productive conversation that was going back and forth. Points were being made, points were being acknowledged. And then when he got backed up into the corner where he had nothing else to offer, he was just, I'm going to come down and punch you in your fat face. And it may have been a prank where he was leading up to this the entire time, but I don't care because there were good points made up to there. And the punchline, pun intended, really just won. I mean, it was a huge win for all of us. I mean, everybody got something out of it. There's another song with a clip. And so this thing just kind of explodes. And, you know, I just wanted to say, hey, thanks, guy. Call back sometime.
I would suspect that if he did, that he would have a different opinion. He has to have... You cornered him in such a way that he has to rethink his position to some degree.
Well, there was one guy who called the show. I don't know who he was. He emailed me and basically said, 2 years ago or so, I used to call into your show all the time and argue with you guys, and I absolutely hated you. I hated everything that you said. I thought you were stupid. I thought you were an idiot. And I just wanted to write you and say that I have since changed my mind because I kept watching, looking for a way to get around to the points you were making. And over the course of a couple of years, I've now become an atheist. And I was like, awesome. Find the shows that you called in on and put together, you know, a YouTube package or something saying, here's me calling and being an idiot. I didn't hear back from him after that because
that would have been a lot of work.
That's a level of exposure that you're not going to see. There are a few people. Yeah. It's hard enough to get somebody to change their mind about deeply held beliefs. It's even harder for somebody who has publicly put themselves out there in defense of a belief, who then later changes their mind, to want to publicly say, look, I was being an idiot. It's one of the reasons you asked early on why I do what I do. That's one, I am one of those people. I was an idiot. I believed things without good reason. I was public about it. And when I changed my mind, it was so significant that there was just no way I couldn't talk about this stuff.
Yeah. Magnus, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep. You're a little muffled, but we hear you.
Awesome. I had a question.
Yes.
Have any of you ever been in a situation where you were like, you knew that you could change this person's mind, you could feel it from the conversation, but you chose not to, out of respect, out of fear for what would happen to him or her?
I don't know whether any of the other two heard that. I missed the middle bit. Have you ever been in a position where something about changing someone's mind? I'm sorry.
Yeah, where you had the opportunity and you knew you could do it, when you knew you could convince somebody and you opted not to. And there have been a number of occasions for me. They have always been when someone is an extreme age, either very young, in which case, if I tell someone the truth that their parents are lying to them, then I am a victimizer, and so I'm not going to be in that position. And also, when someone is very near the end of their life and has obviously invested the entirety of their life into that belief system, and if they are not spreading misinformation and they're not making money on this at the expense of others, then there's no point in depriving them of whatever they've held on to their entire life.
And in my case, well, first of all, I don't know that I've ever been in a position where I was certain that I could change somebody's mind, because I've been convinced that I could change people's mind and had it not happen. I do this on the TV show, and it pretty much consumes my life as far as what people see publicly. But when I'm at work, for example, I don't I hear some kind of superstitious nonsense or some kind of religious nonsense. When I'm around my family members, if I'm out to dinner and I overhear a conversation, I don't interject. I tend to, it's the reason we don't make outgoing calls on the show. People call us. I talk to the people who want to talk about these things. And so the people who would say, oh, you're being mean to these people. I'm not being mean. They called me for a conversation, and they should have known what they were going to get. I mean, given the number of shows we've done. But if, I'm with Arn, if somebody's, on their deathbed, it's not like I'm going to run in and say, hurry, you've got one last chance to get rid of this superstitious nonsense. There's no benefit to that. And I've seen people who are, in public lying to their kids. And I know that I could challenge that, and that on some level I probably should challenge that, and yet I don't, because I also realize that not only are there legal issues when you start dealing with other people's kids, but there's also a level of, this wasn't a conversation that I was invited into. And as sad as it makes me to see somebody sit there and lie to their kids, I'm so optimistic that their kids will eventually see through this nonsense, that the information is out there and available, that I can't, in good conscience, go and trample into somebody else's relationship with their kids and just say, no, your mom is lying to you. I mean, unless there's some imminent harm, unless they're brutalizing their kid or they're, there's a level of indoctrination that goes beyond, I can't intervene.
Yeah, on the same note, I mean, I have this objection to defaming a child's parents before the child. I mean, why would you talk bad? Why would you convince a child that their parents are bad? Because their parents are who they are to some degree. And this is how a child identifies themselves, as a product of their parents. So if you defame either one of them, you're not doing a service to the child. Let the child find out on their own. But anything, and it's upsetting very often when the parents tell the kid something that is woefully wrong and so easily demonstrably wrong, but you don't want to take away that parent's relationship with the child by confronting them in front of the kid. If I could catch that parent, when the kid toddles off to go look at the toy section or whatever, I would love to lay into the parent and let him know what that was and then be done before the kid gets back. But
what's your view, Magnus? Do you think you should try and persuade people, or?
Well, usually, I can understand Alan's talk about kids and old people, but usually I believe you are better off knowing the truth, even if it hurts.
Can't disagree with that.